finally, we're going to look at stanza 5. Right, so let's quickly read through the last stanza. So who's the monster? The thought made me grow pale for 20 seconds, while sail after sail, the tall fins slid away, and then the tail. Right, so last stanza, this is where MacCaig's reflections have taken him. Okay, this is, he's thought we've gone through the poem with him. He's thought about our relation to nature. He's thought about the relationship between us and the shark that he initially thought was a monster. Okay, so here, we'll kind of look at the techniques he uses, but here we're looking at his conclusion, and we're looking at how his perceptions of the shark have changed. Okay. Right, so let's have a think about the last stanza. Now, MacCaig starts off here with what, to me, it's the thing about this poem that always comes back to me. Okay, this is the central idea of the poem. It gets to the grips with the themes and all the rest of it. So it's a rhetorical question, so who's the monster? And the rhetorical question obviously is a question that doesn't really need an answer. And I think it shows us that MacCaig, having done all this reflecting and thinking, he's no longer confident that we are superior to every other creature on the earth. Okay, and what he's doing by using that rhetorical question is provoking us to think about that too, because he's thought about it and he's found it quite shocking. Now, obviously, I suppose what we've got in there are ideas of perhaps what all living creatures bring to the world. And if you think about what the basking shark does, it's essentially a harmless creature. It swims about the ocean with its mouth open, sucking up plankton and just being part of the chain. Okay. When you think about what human beings do, think about, for example, the impact we have on climate. Think about the fact that we seem to throw rubbish around all over the world and the oceans are full of it and affecting marine life. So we can see why he's come to the conclusion that perhaps it's not the shark that's the monster, perhaps it's human beings who are the monsters because of the impact that we have on all the other living creatures on our planet. He then talks about the impact that thought had on him. So the thought made me grow pale. Now, if we look at pale as word choice, it suggests literally that the blood has drained from his face, which suggests equally that he actually does find the idea quite shocking. Okay, he's come to the conclusion that in a metaphorical sense, it's humanity that is the monster rather than this creature that initially that was his reaction. He thought of it as a monster because of its size, but when he looks at it coldly and clearly, he can see that actually it's us that are at fault here. Now, one of the parts of the poem that I find quite disconcerting or upsetting is the next bit. So we've got the enjambment here. The thought made me grow pale for 20 seconds, and our attention is brought to for 20 seconds by the enjambment. Okay, now there are two ways of understanding that. It might be that 20 seconds was the length of time of his experience of his meeting with this shark, okay, which we have shared with him. But if you look at it on another level, it might also refer to the amount of time we spend thinking about realizations like that. He has this realization and this goes through his head, and then he watches the shark sail away and it's kind of gone and we don't do anything about it. And surely that emphasizes how monstrous we truly are, because we can recognize that and yet we can just let life flow on. Okay. Now, the other thing that I would say is worth noticing here is the change of perception. MacCaig at the beginning of the poem talked about a room-sized monster, and we talked about the connotations of monster, okay, and how he saw, as being clumsy, as inelegant, as stupid, as monstrous, okay. Now, if we come back at this end of the poem to this new perception of the shark, we can see that it's now become quite elegant. So he's comparing the shark to a yacht, with sail after sail, which probably relates to the idea of the dorsal fin and then the tail sticking out of the water. Okay, but there's also something quite stately about and elegant about the way the shark is moving. It's no longer the clumsy creature that's slounged back into the water. We can hear its movement through the water. If you think about the use of sibilants, the repetition of the S, sail after sail, the tall fin slid away and then the tail, and we can hear it moving gracefully through the water. Think about the assonance, the long vowel sounds, okay, in sail after sail and tail, and those long vowel sounds again make it sound like an elegant movement as it swims away from him. So what it does is it alerts us to the fact that his perception of the shark has totally changed. He sees it in a totally new light, and sadly he also sees us in a totally new light. Now, I hope that all makes sense to you. Okay, go away and have a think about it. Maybe add the annotations to your own poems. Okay, and then we'll think about where we're going next with this.